Well, let's start with the last issue, why Africa should be concerned, because we saw Iran interfering in Africa, interfering in Sudan, for example, for years, interfering in the Horn of Africa, Bab el Mandeb. Iran has far reaching plans, and the countries, paradoxically, that are standing in the way of Iran today is Israel, United States, and Saudi Arabia. So it is a conflict of the Sunni Muslims against the Shia Muslims that play an important role. As for Mr. Netanyahu's legal problems, Israeli police is flexing its muscle for years now, and it's too early to tell. Before the prosecutor general of Israel, the attorney general, makes his adjudication whether to send it to court and then whether the court will find him guilty. Israel is a rule of law state. Many decades ago, I was an Israeli attorney myself. So in Israel, like in other places, you are innocent until you're proven guilty. And in the meantime, Netanyahu is a prime minister and doing his job.
Right now, we've had different delegates in the United States respond. It's been a vast feedback across the board in the United States. But what are the general sentiments about the timeliness of this conversation, even before Netanyahu speaks at the annual IPAC conference?
There is a fundamental shift in U.S. policy towards Israel and toward the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We saw the Trump administration moving embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. It's recognition of 70 years of Jerusalem being the capital of the Jewish state. U.S. and Israel are closer than ever on the Iranian issue, on the Syrian issue, the Assad regime creating a lot of problems, committing crimes against humanity in their own country, and the strengthening of the Russian presence and Iranian presence in the Middle East. So American-Israeli cooperation is strong, as is American-Saudi cooperation and cooperation with the Gulf states. So you need to look at the Middle East in context, and also Africa being nearby and being influenced by the Iranian Arab competition, and also a lot of African countries having good relations with Israel. This is all very important. And I think that while both leaders, Trump, who is being investigated for the Russian collusion, so far not successfully, as well as Netanyahu, who is being investigated for abuse of power. These leaders, for now, are continuing their mutual policy and mutual cooperation. They get along. Trump and Netanyahu get along much better than Netanyahu got along with Obama.
Now, two of the things that come about with this development, number one, the global oil supply and the kind of disruption this might cause, and two, flights around the same. So earlier, towards the end of last year, there was some bit of disruption and we saw flights being cancelled from some of the major airlines globally. But just speak on these 2 points, transport and the global oil supply, and how this might ripple on our markets.
The oil supply is more or less stable. Oil is in the 60s, which is actually not bad for the oil producing countries and for oil consuming countries. I would say that 50 to 70 is a sweet spot for oil. And so far, we do not see major disruptions. Russia is pumping more, the United States is pumping more. So even if there's some bumps in the Middle East, it's okay for now. And we have synchronized growth. The economies of the United States, Europe, and China are all in good growth. And with that, there is no skyrocketing of the oil prices. So that's a good development overall. In terms of terrorism, we have to be vigilant. I listened carefully to a lecture by one of the leading U.S. Terrorism government specialists and one of the world's leading authorities on terrorism. And those two gentlemen, this was a lecture at the Council of Foreign Relations recently, and those two gentlemen warned us that maybe as many as 60,000, 60,000 terrorists went through the battlegrounds of Syria and Iraq and went back to their countries, including in Africa. And also Al Qaeda being very quiet but building its strength as much as 30 or 40,000 of Al Qaeda. So you have Al Qaeda trying to create a quiet and moderate image, but not giving up its strategic goals. You have ISIS, the bad boy of terrorism, with a lot of people sent all around the world now to build their organization. So this war is far from over. And unfortunately, because Africa has so few resources to fight it in comparison with the United States and Europe, the danger to Africa is high as always.
Right. Just for a purpose of our viewers who are watching across the globe, we had Obama's JCPOA that did not fundamentally reduce this Iranian nuclear threat. But do we anticipate that President Donald Trump will be looking at it from a different angle or picking up where his predecessor left off?
Yes, President Trump is on record demanding renegotiation of GCPOA. And as we saw with his imposition of the steel and aluminum tariffs, he may act in a rough manner, decisively, if he doesn't like something. So he warned again and again that the Iranians need to renegotiate. There should be no sunset clause. In other words, this JCPOA right now ends in 15 years, different parts end in 10, 15, 20 years. That has to stop. It should be open-ended. And the second thing is the missiles should not be allowed to be developed. And the Iranians already said that they will continue developing ballistic missiles. So that is one of the critical points that may trigger a real huge crisis in the relationship between the United States and Iran.